Okay, today we're going to look at sustainable tourism through the lenses of preserving and protecting our cultural resources. In 1 to 2 words, what does sustainable tourism mean to you? Beer, hotels, job creation, reinvestment. Infrastructure, care, artist income, balance. So one of the reasons that we had incorporated sustainable tourism in today's program is because Thrive Asheville is tackling this topic right now in their Ideas to Action Forum. 30 community leaders are talking about what sustainable tourism looks like in our community and how can we preserve our community. And so these discussions will be taking place through, I think, the spring with action steps on what we need to do. And the process, where we are in the process right now, I'm actually on one of those 30 community leaders, is gathering information. And so wanted to have this discussion as the creative sector to kind of understand our unique point of view. So as I said before, we're going to be looking at this through the lenses of preserving and protecting our cultural resources, but we're also going to be discussing what the creative sector's role is in, or should be, or could be, in supporting tourism mitigation strategies, such as encouraging longer stays to reduce what they call churn and burn turnover, as well as encouraging greater distribution of wealth, helping to distribute visitors throughout our county, as well as our region. So, moderator Jessica Tomasin is the co-founder of Asheville Music Professionals, founder of Connect Beyond Festival, and studio manager for Echo Mountain Recording Studio. Jessica is the Arts Coalition Chair for the Recording, Publishing, and Film Committee, and she also serves on the steering committee for Thrive Asheville's Ideas to Action Forum. Jessica, if you want to come take your seat. Jessica is joined today by Pat Kappes, Explore Asheville's Vice President of Community Engagement, Lucious Wilson, General Manager of Wedge Brewing Company, as well as the Chair of Rabuck, so the River Arts District Business Association, Justin Rabuck, who is the owner and co-founder of Horse and Hero and the Big Crafty, and then I will be sitting in on this panel. Take the screen down.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today, and special thanks to Katie for putting together a great day of programming, supporting the arts. So, sustainable tourism, those of us that live here, we know all about, we've all felt the negative and positive effects of tourism. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about Explore Asheville. We're going to talk to Pat. So for those of you that don't know, the BCTDA is one of the biggest supporters of the arts in Asheville. And so I want to start by asking Pat some of the ways that Explore Asheville has supported the artist community.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me? Explore Asheville basically is a sales and marketing organization that promotes visitation to the area, which is bringing customers for our local businesses. And so we do this through advertising, we do this through public relations, partnerships, and then managing our major marketing platforms, which is the exploreasheville.com website and the annual printed visitor guide. And so we use these platforms to connect this larger customer base with our local businesses. And then we also have grant funding programs, which is the Festivals and Cultural Events grant program, which we just completed a cycle and funded, I think, 26 events that are taking place in the next year with $110,000. And then we also have another grant program called Tourism Product Development Fund, TPDF, which invests in capital development projects throughout Buncombe County, many of which are related or part of the arts sector, such as this facility that we're sitting in right now, and the Asheville Arts Museum and Center for Craft. And so those are some ways that we are supporting the arts sector.
So I'm going to stay with you for a second, Pat. So as somebody who's lived here for 23 years, we've seen a lot of conversations that have happened about what the tourism tax goes to and how that money is spent. And what I found is that not everyone understands that that is something that's dictated on the state level. And so can you talk a little bit about those numbers? Because I also know that there's been some discussion about changing those numbers and how that money's spent.
Yep, sure. So we are funded 100% by occupancy tax. So that's when people are staying in any type of lodging throughout Buncombe County, they're paying this occupancy tax. And then the state legislation mandates that 75% of that can be spent on marketing efforts, which is promoting the destination outside of this area. And then 25% goes to the Tourism Product Development Fund. And so that's the capital development program, and which has supported, I think 39 community projects, which are used to attract visitors to our area, but also serve people living here. In fact, most of them I think all of them are used more by locals versus visitors. And so there is a potential legislation change that is being presented or considered or worked on at this point, where they would change the split from 75 to 25 to 66% going toward marketing and 33% going to this, capital development, local investment for community projects.
Great, thank you. And this question's for everybody. So if that amount changed, how should it be spent to best support the local creative community?
Well, I think part of what's being proposed, right, is greater flexibility in how it can be spent. Isn't that right, Pat?
Yes, so we're aware that there would be potential flexibility in the guidelines, which at this point it's limited to capital development, but it may be, it's being considered to be used for maintenance for projects that have been previously funded or future projects that would qualify for that funding.
And I'll just say, there's been a lot of call for infrastructure investments. And I think that's a perfect opportunity to incorporate more creative placemaking into our community and support artists here and within our region.
Anyone else want to comment?
I think speaking to the new greenway that goes along Riverside, I think you get this beautiful thing and it's great, and TD has done a great job in the community. But I do think that the maintenance is particularly important because otherwise you create these really beautiful things and then you put the support of these beautiful things on the city, which is not getting the same type of funding. And then so we create this bigger thing, but then put the burden of its maintenance on a smaller thing. And so creating both the building and the maintenance of the thing and within the same sphere makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, it becomes, you know, businesses or volunteers that are doing this maintenance. So I think it would be good to have that funding already in place.
Lucious, you brought up a really good point when we were preparing for this panel about that. And we had a conversation about that, and where there's sort of some breakdowns that happen from this funding that happens to create projects that, I mean, I don't know about the rest of you, but I love the Greenway. I'm down there at least twice a week, maybe sometimes 3 times a week. And so you had brought up this potentiality of maybe a private-public partnership. Can you speak a little bit more of what that would look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. As my role as the River Artistic Business Association chair, you see a lot of the minutia of things that occur and what needs to happen. So one of the things about the Greenway is that all the funding was for the Greenway, but not the maintenance of it or even the structure of it. And so some of the process was figuring out whether it was going to be Parks and Rec that was going to do the mowing and the garbages, or is that going to be City Works, and who's responsible for that. And so I think opening up the discussion towards, you know, either more funding or also public-private partnerships, where if you are a real estate investor and you've put up this center and you want it to be beautiful, you don't want across the street to not be beautiful. And so I think it would be, you know, it would be worthy of an approach to that investor to say, hey, can you support some of this funding to help maintain this, which is going to help you because people are going to come in and then they're going to spend their money in these businesses, which are going to be able to pay their rents and all this stuff. So the economic structure of it seems to make sense to fit it all together as opposed to having all the sides separate.
So with all of this new development that's happened down in the River Arts District, and this is a question I'm going to pose to you, Lucious, but then open up to everyone. Can you talk about the positive effects that have happened in the River Arts District from the Greenway going in, and then any concerns about new development in that area negatively impact the artist community?
I think from a financial standpoint, and for us at least, it's pretty obvious. We are in 2021 post-pandemic. We're about 102% of the numbers that we did in 2019. And considering how far down we were, I think January, March, and January, February, and March, we were down 60%, 40%. You know, and so to be able to rebound that is because people are enjoying the Greenway and then, you know, coming to the places to shop. I know and heard of other artists that have talked about the same thing, where, you know, to a certain degree, they're running out of art and creating it. I think the biggest thing that I've heard in terms of what support is needed is affordable retail space. So as the developers are moving in, making sure that they're allotting retail space for the artists that have helped to develop the area, stay in the area, and also affordable housing is important, not only in the River Arts District, but Asheville as a whole. If people can't afford to, if artists can't afford to live here, then it becomes hard for them to do their art here. And I have heard of a couple of artists that have left and gone to places like Philadelphia because they just feel like they have more of an opportunity to have quality of life. And I think really focusing on the quality of life. Every time people hear affordable housing, it's such a negative terminology, and affordable housing reaches a lot of people that you wouldn't think they're very middle class and not just people that are poor. Obviously, you want to help people that are poor, but my point is more, it's not just about poor people. It's about people that are just trying to maintain a living in a way and stay in the city that produce money for the city in their art and in their businesses. So, you know, creating an environment for them to be able to stay here helps us all out, as opposed to it being a handout. It's not a handout. It's creating a sustainable society.
I just want to tag on to that. You know, that it's definitely a concern of mine with the River Arts District. Is it going to be loved to death? Like, are we going to see all of the artists pushed out of that area and it's just going to be the River District? Particularly because many of those warehouse buildings are owned by artists currently. And a lot of them are getting to retirement age and will be selling their buildings, probably for a profit, you know, I mean, you can't blame them for that. But what will happen to the River Arts District when that does occur?
That's a great question. I can tell you from being in the music industry and seeing what's happened to Nashville and seeing this juxtaposition between people who have owned studios for many, many years that have had many legacy artists through there, but this is sort of their space, was their retirement plan too. At some point they would, you know, sell it and move on, and the city trying to do some mitigation things with that in terms of, you know, dictating certain areas are historic and this can only be built here. And it's been a really interesting position to see people be put in. That's like, well, this was my retirement. This is what I was going to do. But then also their own internal struggle of like, but I want this to stay alive and well. So it's definitely, you know, this thing that we're talking about, sustainable tourism, isn't necessarily an easy topic to tackle. And like Sekou was talking about on the last panel, is like, you got to put the work in. So it's just same thing with affordable housing, which we all know, we've been talking about this for a minute. I want to talk a little bit more I want to hear from you, Justin, about your thoughts in terms of how the creative community is impacted both positively and negatively by tourism.
Yeah, first I want to ask Lucious, were you saying that 40 to the first 3 months of the year were down 40 to 60% for
You're down
artists?
40%.
Okay.
So yeah, the January, February, before things opened up.
Yep.
So January, February, March, everything was still closed to a certain degree, and
Right.
then opened up. So yeah, there was considerable. There were a lot of studios that were closed. You know, and then things opened back up. So about April, I think, is where people really started, and the weather changed. So about April is where people started seeing their revenue shift. Some people last year though were able to keep their revenue up, a lot of it from downsizing, but
Right.
that early part of the year, and then there was a pretty distinctive curve upwards around April.
But you're saying now everything's kind of back up to that, up like 100%.
For Wedge as a business, yes.
Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of artists, like you know, Patty Turno owns the Curve Studios, and you know, she's talked a lot about just she has seen a tremendous increase in business, and also the artists that are in her studios have seen a tremendous increase in business, where, you know, their talk is more, how do we sustain the production level as a lifestyle? So, you know, as an artist, you want to take time to create art.
Right.
And how do you take that time, but also sell? And that is becoming another factor, is how do you create the quality of art, but also have enough products to maintain it? So I think some of it is just having the discussions out there, so people are aware of what the challenges are, because it's not if or not, it's more like, how do we build it together? How do we create solutions to the problems? But in order to do that, you have to have the conversations of what the specific problems are, and they're not always what you think. Probably the biggest thing is the retail, being able to have a space that you can sell your wares. A lot of artists realize that they might want to leave Inner Asheville because it is so expensive, but they want a place where they can come in and sell their wares. And so some of the ideas, well, if you have an art studio in your home, and that's where you're producing your art, but then you come in and have a retail center that's affordable, then you can still be in Asheville and have that go in. And I think that's some of the discussion, because in the beginning, the discussion was a lot on just affordable housing, and not necessarily on the retail space. So I know it was, I think, 144 Riverside is a new development of rental properties, and that was a big part of the discussion of where do we want these investors to spend their money, and a lot of it came in down the retail space, and not necessarily just affordable housing, because 10% of a property isn't very much, and also puts you in an environment where you're around not necessarily like-minded people. So sometimes you would want to sell your wares and then hang out with your community.
Yeah, but I was just surprising that the numbers are so similar to our numbers at Horse and Hero and from other businesses that I've spoken with downtown. It's kind of nice that we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the up. Yeah, to answer your question, Jessica, I obviously tourists are buying from local artists and entrepreneurs, sustaining a local economic base when they buy local. And I would say at least 75 to 90% of sales at our downtown spot, Horse and Hero, are from tourists. And these are the people that are following us on the social media and also following artists and buying from artists long term. We hear about these connections that are lasting, that have, I guess we've been open 7-8 years. And it's really almost an emotional thing to have these tourists who even live in other countries or whatever check in during the pandemic and buy for people just to show support for, you know, a friend or family member that they may have stayed with here. Nothing was being shipped overseas, but that, you know, those are the kind of touching things that kind of got us through emotionally. So there's definitely money flowing in from outside into a grassroots level of the local economy. And yeah, from a festival perspective, we survey attendees and we have a super high local attendance, but a lot of people do come from out of town. They make it a vacation. A lot of artists have moved away, or they are trying out a relationship or whatever it may be that gets them away, but they do come back for almost like a homecoming to check in or to restock places where they're selling their wares. And
Can I ask how many artists are represented at Horse and Hero?
4,000. No, like 70 to 80, honestly, 70 to 80.
How many of those are local?
I would say all but like 5. And they
Wow.
definitely have ties, you know, whether
Yeah.
it's, you know, Max Seckel lives in New Orleans, but we found out about his work from a local artist who was wanting him to print for them, that kind of thing. So there's like local ties, and he actually will come and hang out. And it's, yeah, but yeah, I would say all but 5.
That's impressive. It sounds like to me that we need a Horse and Hero in the River Arts District.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
I'll get right on that, right?
Justin's like, gee, thanks, Jessica.
That's cool. It's
Sounds
cool. We
awesome.
got this. We can make this
Yeah.
happen. We
Oh,
can
yeah.
make this happen. So, Katie, a question for you. So, you know, what do you think we need to do to protect our cultural assets? Like you were just talking about being loved to death. And so
Yeah.
I think we can all relate, you know, I think that's sort of a two-sided thing of one, you know, we talk about how many times people that live in town don't want to go downtown and that sort of thing.
Well, you know, part of it is we don't have any designated staff at city or county. And so the arts don't really have a voice when decisions are made. The way that the city supports the art is through the public art program. But the public art master plan is 20 years old. And, you know, since I moved here, I've heard calls for an arts and cultural master plan for Asheville and Buncombe County. And, you know, as chair of the Public Art and Cultural Commission, it's been what I've been working towards since I joined that committee. I really think, you know, one of the first steps and what I've asked for through the Thrive process is to do a cultural asset inventory. That is both to understand what we have and need to preserve, and also to do an equity audit on what we have and what is missing. So I would love to see something like that happen. Also, as Lucious hinted, we're not real good at the long-term planning. So we'll build it without really thinking through what needs to happen to maintain it or what the next steps are. And I think that is another role that having this master plan would really fill. So I think that is our next big step.
I would just like to point out too, as Stephanie was talking about in the last panel, is that I don't feel like the Arts Council has always been very welcoming to different kinds of arts. As somebody who's been in music for a long time, I never felt like music was considered one of the art forms in Asheville. And with the formation of the Arts Coalition, I think it's a really exciting step for us in the art community. And Katie's done a great job of bringing people together from these different sectors to have a common voice, but also to support one another. And that's one of those things that I really appreciate when we were working with the noise ordinance, sending things out, getting support from other arts organizations that aren't involved in music was really incredible to see people come together. So I'm personally excited about what what's happening with the Arts Coalition and the Arts Council right now. So thank you for taking the time and energy and staying on top of all of
Thank
us
you.
for that.
I appreciate that. We are definitely stronger when we work together. And, I just saw a lot of silos that needed to come down. And so I think this Arts Coalition is a step in the right direction and getting rid of those silos.
Well, and I think that's really important for policy change too. I mean, if we're going to have a seat at the table and try to change policy that's supportive of arts and culture here in Asheville, then we definitely need to come together to make that happen. So a question for Pat. Can you talk about some of the tourism mitigation strategies that are being worked on right now with Explore Asheville?
Sure. So we have new strategic pillars that have been adopted by the TDA that were brought to light by our new CEO, Vic Isley, earlier this year. And so this is a big part of our focus. And so one of those ideas is dispersal. So that's basically focusing on dispersing people throughout the county. So they are not concentrated in downtown. So that's spreading the benefits of this visitor spending on economy to various parts or different wider range parts of the county. And then another area is focusing on length of stay. So if we can increase the length of stay when people come here, then it's less of that, as you mentioned earlier, that churn and burn. And people will, if they're coming here for a short period of time, they're hitting, the most popular attractions or restaurants or retail shops. But if they're here longer, then they have opportunity to explore other experiences, get out to different parts of the county, and spend those dollars in other places. So those are a couple of the ways that we're working on.
I'm curious, just in terms of, we've seen, it seems that it's changed in terms of who Asheville is getting marketed to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, and this isn't necessarily a question for just you, Pat, but I'm just thinking to the group of what if we were doing more to reach out to other artists? And again, I keep thinking about that last panel because that was so good, right? So I'm like, how can we incorporate some of the things we're talking about of equity into sustainable tourism? And what I'm wondering is there some ways, does anybody have some ideas in terms of how we can be marketing to bring other artists here to visit Asheville, but also to help support our community?
And that is also a priority of ours, to extending that genuine invitation to more diverse audiences. So that's an intentional investment of advertising dollars into other media, marketing platforms that are drawing different and more diverse audiences. So that's one thing that we're consciously doing. And then I wanted to mention actually an example of something that's happening in the River Arts District, which I think touches upon what y'all were just talking about. So the importance of, Katie talking about doing those master plans, it's so critical, but that will also highlight some things that are happening. So for instance, the building 8 River Arts Place, which is across the street from Curb Studios, That's a city-owned building that was funded by tourism dollars. And so that the city just rented that space for $1 a year to the group Black Wall Street, Asheville, which is hosting, that'll be a spot for like selling of, wares by crafters, artists, makers, specifically for Black creators. So, and that's organized by the Grind ABL team, Jay and Bruce. So I think that's a really cool example of how we can, partner together and do these intentional investments and to make that stuff happen.
Well, and I'll just say, when I attended the annual meeting of the BCTDA, I was really impressed by how the marketing has changed. It felt a lot more authentic. It felt a lot more Asheville. There were a lot more interviews with people I knew, So I applaud you for, really making that effort to represent Asheville in a much better way with your marketing as well. And I think that will bring people in as well. Jenny Pickens is a feature in that, Joseph Pearson, lots of faces you see around town. And that hasn't always been the case.
I think, not to pop in here, but I think like authentically reaching out, and we do have a lot of artists wanting to show work from nearby, whether it's Charlotte or Boone or Atlanta, whatever. But I think taking that a step further, and we're, having a small group show with Goodyear Arts in Charlotte, inviting them to participate, like in a day-long screen printing workshop over at Citizen Vinyl. Those are the kind of things that kind of foster like a really lasting relationship. And then you're working with creatives who can not only you're building you're expanding your community, but you're also giving another place to sell your work as artists who are trying to, because the goal is for local artists to not just sell here. There's a whole lot. We got the internet, we got stuff. It's but having this kind of authentic expansion and building of community, I think, is so vital.
I think part of that too is talking about all artists are entrepreneurs. And we all know that Asheville is a bring your own job town in a lot of ways. And so I'd like to pose this question in terms of what are some things that we can be doing to help supporting artists as entrepreneurs so that they can be sustainable. And we talk about what happened over the last year, and it's great that people supported artists through buying things online. We had streaming of shows. We saw a lot of that. There was a lot of support to begin with. And as a town that is just so dependent on tourism, what are some things that you think we can do to help support artists to be able to be better business people, or support in terms of partnerships or relationships or getting outside of town like that?
I think coaching, when an artist comes to me and says, I'm thinking about being an artist, I've got 2 paintings I'd like you to see. It's like I'm going to check it out, but I'm also going to say, don't ever approach another gallery like that. You want to be a pro out the gate, because that's what we're trying to do. And on the flip of that, being open to listening and checking and really digging into their process, or offering suggestions and being open to feedback. Those are, I feel like I'm kind of forgetting the question, but that's.
How do we support artists to be entrepreneurs and to be able to get out there and do those things and be able to support themselves?
Right. Yeah, I do think we've even talked about kind of not, am I supposed to talk about this?
I'm not sure.
This is top secret, y'all, between Justin and Katie.
We're going to find out. Okay.
In the beginning. No, Yeah, I won't go there. But anyway, it's,
No,
there's,
Now you gotta
you can
tell
go
us.
ahead. You could go ahead. That's all right.
yeah, I think.
What happened was.
It's just tea.
So we're building some suspense
Um,
here, Justin.
Yeah, I think offering coaching and kind of all the support that is there and asking, what do you need or what can we do to support, it's kind of become known that we have a bunch of extra tents at Horse and Hero. People can pop in and grab it, whatever it may be, and not just telling people about the big Crafty. Like there's so many different things going on, like showing people and making it known that it's not just this or this, that there is a whole lot to it, and offering other ways to produce your work. Like I feel like people get locked into thinking that this is the way it's going to be, but there's like working with the risograph or working with screen printing or printmaking in general kind of offers something that is there for forever, and it is super affordable, and it is like a genuine, everyone can come in and feel like they belong, like they're part of it, and can buy this $15 print. And one thing I was gonna say earlier is one thing that we didn't expect back to tourism is artists who were selling one print day one at Horse and Hero are still able to sell that.
Exactly.
Print.
That same
There's
print.
like-
Yeah.
It's like a new audience every day. And it's
Mhm.
something that was like a big surprise. We didn't expect that to happen. You definitely want to like always be working on your creativity and producing new work, but it's not just a new set of work every few months that's once it's gone, you got to start over. It's like this building. What's the word? You build your portfolio.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's there forever. And especially if it is a new audience at all times.
Well, that's one of the things I found interesting when we were talking about the pandemic and you were talking about the fact that there was artists that from the same print that they've had there for years was bringing in $100 to $200 a month. And that's what I was thinking about when Lucious made that point with trying to, with artists being like, how do I have the time to create and then, but also have to sell and keeping up with supply and demand. And it just seems just like one of those things of sharing resources and information with each other. So I hope that there's ways that we can continue to do that through.
We're
through the
working
Arts
on
Council.
it. So what I'll say is I've been at the Arts Council a little over 2 years right now. And what I saw pretty much, well, before I started in my 20 years I've been here, the Arts Council wasn't really fulfilling the role it needed to for the arts community. So I started by going around and talking to arts leaders, artists, community leaders with the same question: what do you want from your Arts Council? And there are 3 primary focus areas that the Arts Council now has. I heard loud and clear, you want an advocate for the arts sector. And we have really leaned into that role in the last 2 years. So that's been a lot of where we've had to spend a lot of time and energy. The second is public art. And what I mean by that is art in public space. And the third is services for creatives. And what that really means is support for the business of art. And so we have several grant programs, but we also are working and are actively developing programs for professional development, for training, to help our entrepreneurs get their businesses going. And that's the last piece to be brought online, but it's coming, I promise. So we've had a lot of really good discussions about how to fulfill that role, and I'm feeling good about the direction that we're taking.
That's great. And we appreciate you for sure on that. So my next question is, what is and this is for everybody, is what role should we as a creative community take in some of these mitigation practices with tourism.
I can chime in a little bit here. I think that creating, experiences or offerings that are outside of what, the traditional of what we've been talking about, that will help with that dispersal, like geographically or throughout the week. And I think one example is, Katie, you could speak to this, but the downtown art galleries having their walk, which was moved from Friday evenings to Sundays, I believe. Is that correct?
This is one of those things that's coming online next year.
Sorry.
I'll go ahead
for
and
that.
let you guys in on it.
Yeah.
All sorts of exciting things.
You
are
guys
there.
are telling all my secrets.
Sorry, Katie.
So there has been for many years a downtown Asheville Arts District, and it was 30 galleries that had a Friday art walk. That group kind of disbanded during the pandemic. And so I have been having discussions with the Asheville Downtown Association, and we're planning to host a Sunday art stroll every Sunday starting in the spring to encourage visitors to come downtown, residents and visitors to come downtown and enjoy the arts, not just galleries, but festivals. This is a time when theaters have matinees. We really want to bring people down to see all the experiences that we have in our downtown. So creating a destination and an event is a great way to do this. And you talked about another artist group that
I'm
had.
sorry about that.
Sorry.
So another
Sorry.
great example is artists in Leicester actually created a Come to Leicester art studio tour. And so that is they all banded together and have created this experience and are promoting it. And it was actually funded through the Festivals and Cultural Events Support Fund, but that's just a great way that, gives us something to talk about and promote and shine a light on these artists that are not located in the highly populated areas like downtown or River Arts District. So.
I should add, we put it on a Sunday too, to encourage longer stays.
Yes.
So planning events and things on days that can encourage people, kind of the off days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, helps to encourage visitors to stay longer in the community.
And adding to that, I will also advocate for just ensuring that whatever is happening is being featured on exploreasheville.com. We don't talk about that as much. We talk about the investments and whatnot, but that is our core offering, that this is a marketing platform. It's a website that provides free access for our local businesses, and it receives over 6 million hits a year. So it's a tremendous free platform for your business listing as well as the events calendar.
Lucious, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think, being responsible for where the direction of it goes. I think sometimes we all get very busy and we want everyone on the outside to do the thing that is what we need. And sometimes you have to learn whatever it is, whether it's understanding the funding of the TDA and instead of just saying, well, to change, figure out how to get some of that money, figure out what are the organizations to do it. In the pandemic, there were resources out there, but you really had to be knowledgeable in those resources and put yourself out there to understand it. It wasn't going to be handed to you, whether it was the TDA grant, which I know for us for a business was huge, more mentally than it was fiscally, like just the idea that there was money that I didn't have to worry about how to spend. And anyone knows who's been involved with grants, it's always like, oh, you have to spend it X amount of way, and having it be like, well, I can just relax for a little bit and see how it was helped us out creatively. But I had to fill out the applications and all that, and finding the PPP money and realizing that as a single business, as a single person business, that you were eligible for PPP business, took doing that research and reaching out there and not just always assuming that the information is going to come to you. just realizing it's hard for everyone, like, but sometimes you have to do the research because there are people out there that want to help, but you have to sometimes get to them to get that help. It's not always going to come to you.
I think that's another thing that's important for the community to know, is just to support organizations that are helping to get that access to the creative community as well. I just think about, I'm also the co-founder of Asheville Music Professionals, and our mission is to provide education, advocacy, and connection in the music community in Western North Carolina. And during the pandemic, we went from mainly doing a lot of education-based events and connecting people and educating people on all sorts of things, from marketing to copyright and publishing and things like that, to providing support for people. So whether it was monetary support, to food, partnering with places like Ingalls to get people groceries, you know, we just had to shift our focus, and I'm grateful for everybody that helped be a part of that. And I think that's just part of the thing of it takes a village in terms of the fact of making it all work. So, you know, it's a big part of like, I'm glad to know you have tents now, for instance, right? So you know,
You're gonna regret saying that. But
yeah, that's your secret you gave away today. So, but also it's good to know that, because, you know, as I work on festivals and events, and I was fortunate to be a part of Juneteenth this year, it would be really great to know that those resources are out there, because everybody, you know, what's rising tides lift all ships, right? So I just think that that's another amazing thing, that I know that there's a lot of people in the audience that represent different parts of the creative sector. And so what I hope and encourage people to do today and going forward is reaching out to, you know, somebody that you vaguely know here or maybe not know at all, and maybe start having a conversation. I would love to see more of that sort of almost like a ask and offer sort of thing.
Well, an easy way to join the conversation would be to join one of the Arts Coalition committees.
Oh my gosh, no way, y'all. That's a great way to get involved. No, it really is. It's a, you know, just, it's a great way to get to know people. Hopefully, as things start to open up more and more, we'll have some more events and things like that in person that we can do, but also, you know, Zoom in the meantime. But yeah, definitely being a part of one of the committees on the Arts Coalition would be a great way to get involved, for sure. Let's see, any other comments from the group here?
You think we were ready to move into the Q&A?
I think we're
Feeling
ready.
good?
I think we're ready.
Can we bring the screen back up? So here's the first question that was asked. Could the TDA dollars be used to purchase rad buildings to keep them available for artists? Would that fit TDA spending requirements?
At this time, no, that would not meet the legislative mandate. For dollars need to be dedicated for capital investment, for it's technically at this point like construction related costs.
There's also an obstacle in terms of the pricing of the buildings and the upfit that is needed in most of those buildings. The endeavor that goes into that building has to generate a certain amount of revenue just for the upfit alone. Once you change the scope of a building, it's going to require you to do a lot of work, which is why it ends up being a lot of high-end things, because that's what it's going to take to do the $2 million worth of just regular maintenance that that building is going to require to upfit it to be a new building. So there's a lot of obstacles to that.
Well, and Pat, even if it was allowed, you'd need another organizing entity to administer it.
Well, that's the other thing I would say, is that funding is restricted to nonprofit organizations, not private businesses.
And that is scope creep. That's not the mission of like the Asheville Area Arts Council, just so you know. Just putting that out there. Okay, so next question. Is the Explore Asheville website open to surrounding county organizations to submit events?
It's primarily focused for Buncombe County businesses and events. If we do, there are some events that happen, you know, in the vicinity or in the region that are added to the calendar as well because they're major draws. A lot of the outdoor things, you know, we don't have all of our mountain assets and whatnot in county, so there is some flexibility there, but primarily because it's earned from revenue that's generated in Buncombe County, it's dedicated to Buncombe County offerings.
Do you think that would change with some of these mitigation things that we're working on?
I think being restricted to Buncombe County is.
It has to be?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. I'm curious to know with the festival and events grants that was awarded, how many of those were outside of Buncombe County? Do you know off the top of
None.
your head?
None, because
none.
it's limited to
It
Buncombe
is
County.
limited to
Yeah.
Buncombe County. Okay.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, but there was definitely things that were other places like Leicester and other places that were. able to-
Leicester's within county.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, just out of downtown.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
So next question. I've neglected to really explain what the Arts Coalition is. I'm sorry, guys. So the Arts Council put out a creative jobs report. It's a 5-year study looking at the creative community leading up to the pandemic. This is a 40+ page document that took up a year of my life. But what I realized in doing this really deep analysis is we were not serving even a fraction of the creative sector. And so being the small but mighty organization that we are, we were trying to figure out how we could serve the entire creative community. And so that's where the Arts Coalition came in. And we have to build a network. And so we have created 10 committees that we feel allow us to cover most of the creative sector. And so those committees are arts education, arts equity, publishing, recording and film, manufacturing, nonprofits, performance venues, professional and business services, public art, festivals and community events, sole proprietors and independent contractors, and trade and retail. And so these 10 committees are chaired by some wonderful arts community leaders, some sitting on the stage right next to me, including Justin and Jessica. And they meet with me monthly. And we, as a group, have set our policy initiatives for the year. And then their committees each meet quarterly to discuss these topics. And what we found is we're all dealing with the same issues, but we're looking at it through completely different lenses. And so it's been extremely helpful for me to be able to have these discussions from multiple points of view. It helps us understand how to best advocate on behalf of the sector. And so that's kind of the nutshell of what the Arts Coalition is. We ask that members be a member of the Arts Council, but you don't have to be. We really are more interested in you being involved in the committee conversations. So there is a page on our website for this if you want to find out more. So ashevillearts.com/arts-coalition. Okay, let me get back to the questions. Justin, this next one is for
boy.
you. What do you wish more artists knew or had done before they contacted you? Where are the big gaps in terms of business skills?
Who asked this? Well, I mean, like I was saying earlier, that's, coming approaching a gallery in a way that makes, it's kind of like puts almost like self-degrading, like I'm just getting started kind of thing. Clearly they have interest in art. Clearly they have some kind of content to share. I think owning that and being confident with it is definitely a big skill. I think price range is always going to be a necessary thing. We're happy to sell original work for something that I would have to have a conversation with if I bought with Brandy, the breadwinner. But offering prints and offering things, offering other items that are more accessible. I think having that kind of range is good. I don't like, as far as the gaps in business skills, it's like, that's kind of part of what a gallery does, is a lot of artists do not want to have face-to-face interactions with people at all. They want to focus on the art. They're happy to work with that percentage. And that's kind of why it's kind of the role of many galleries, is to take care of the business part, to write that monthly check, to let them know when work sells, to let them know that, hey, we're almost out of this. Can you get more? I hope I'm answering the question pretty well, but that might be what I have.
I have a little side note just on like being prepared for success. We had this window that we were serving outside for the greater part of COVID last year. And so we wanted to support art. So I said, well, what if we sold art out of this window? And everyone thought I was pretty stupid about that. But I was like, I think this will work because people are coming up and they want stuff. And so, reached out to a whole bunch of people and no one really had anything, and finally reached out to Julie Armbrush, and she's like, oh my God, it's such a great idea. And she like shows up the next day and she puts this artwork up, and she's got a pay center. So she had a way for people to pay. She had a way to redo the art. And it just sat there. So basically throughout the year, people would buy the stuff, they would pay for it, they would show us the receipt, they could take it. And she's, maybe 6 months into it, I asked her, well, how's it going? Because for me, it was great because we were doing something, but it was very low maintenance for us. And she's like, it's awesome. At the end of the month, every month, there's like more money in my bank account. And I'm sure it wasn't like a tremendous amount of money, but in a time when everything was closed, it was definitely a revenue source for her. And I think those are the types of things, like just be ready. And she was ready, and she was able to provide money for her with very little work.
And beyond the money, you're staying connected.
Absolutely. And I certainly, for me, I now I go to her website, I go to her Instagram feed. There's definitely ways in which just me as a person, I now see all of the work that she has and the new things she's doing. Like, oh man, I should check that out. Certainly.
So I want to circle back to what we talked about with arts entrepreneurship for a second, and apologize to Craft Your Commerce, one of our sponsors today. They have a number of wonderful workshops, coaching, and professional development for artists. And so I highly recommend checking out their website. So next question. Does any of this apply to literary arts? I'm guessing you're talking about bringing people or tourism related to literary arts? Or are you talking about the Arts Coalition has a focus on literary arts? Writers and authors are actually one of our top creative jobs, our top 5 creative jobs here in Buncombe County. I think that there is a lot of events. I mean, you think of Malaprops and their book signings and stuff that bring people here and bring residents into downtown around literary arts. Does anybody want to add to that?
There's also the Flatiron Writers Group
Mhm.
that hosts workshops and classes and bring events
And
and
they're definitely bringing
bring
people.
people in. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I need like two different sides of my brain at the same time. Artists have been a force and energy of urban renewal in most cities, opening new areas, then moving on when priced out. It often is a successful model, not a bad thing. You mean the artists getting moved out after the space is renewed? It feels like a bad thing.
I mean, I think there's an evolution. Certainly, the River Arts District has been an evolution, and I think that we forget that life is an evolution. And so I think to a certain degree, if you have an underserved area and then you bring attention to the underserved area, it gets nice. It's the same thing as your yard. You know, like if your yard is overgrown and you just keep it that way, then, you know, it doesn't matter as much. But once you start manicuring your lawn, then you're in there every day picking out weeds and making sure it still looks beautiful. And I think it's the same sort of thing. Like sometimes in these areas that aren't, you know, there's opportunity there, but once it's shed light to, then it's going to get prettier, and then you're going to have to maintain it to a certain degree. And that's an evolution that I think you just have to take advantage of there's a constant evolution of wherever it is. So the River Arts District definitely has gone through a curve, and at one point in that curve, there was a lot of artists that were down there. They were living in buildings, they were living in offices, they had their own community that they were dealing with, and it's moved on. But a lot of those artists have moved on to some really great things. I think I should remember the guy's name, but he's doing the jailhouse.
Josh
Josh.
Yeah,
Kopis.
and so
Yeah.
you look at, like, you know, his development and you know, you can look at this as a positive. It isn't always, you know, that growth isn't always a negative. You know, people have had opportunities that are there, and some people have moved on, but it's always going to change. Like, change is the only thing that's constant. So yes, these areas are going to look not that great, and then there's going to be evolution of them as the buildings, you know, currently dilapidate or are in a FEMA flood zone, or all the other things that occur for that area. You know, so I look at it more as an evolution. We all have to evolve, whether it's as business owners or artists.
Anybody else? Okay.
I think at the core of that is also kind of remaining, you know, culturally authentic. And I feel like that's what draws people here and kind of provides this long-term economic sustainability. But that, like,
I totally agree with
goes
you. And I
right
think
with that.
you got to put big effort into that. I mean, I
Totally.
think that, you know, as a Wedge, we have a lot of conversations on it. We've had a lot of conversations this year, and some people have been in favor of those conversations, and some people haven't. And we really tried to be, you know, a local brewery that supports the art and keeps our structure the same. It's why we don't go into distribution. It's why we kind of try to keep this earthy model, but sometimes you go there and you're like, whoa, you know, like, are they even maintaining this place? And some of that is because, you know, our focus is on the beer and the atmosphere, and there's other breweries that are we think that are doing fantastic things. Your Highlands, your High Wires, your Burials, your Wicked Weeds are growing in a way, and we're just trying to be a part of the community, and that's intentional. And so I think you really have to, that authenticity has to be very intentional. We're very intentional about providing a space for locals to come to, because it has become a lot of a tourist thing, but we try to do things that we think that local people are going to do. You have to be very intentional about that authenticity. And for us, it's being who we are. It's building. Our staff is people that have worked with us. We haven't really brought in a lot of outside people within our staff, and it's all people that have been a part of that community. We decided, you know, a couple months ago, we only want to work with people we like, and that's like a hard business. It's a hard business move. Like, well, what do you mean you're only going to work with people you like? Well, because it matters in what we do every day. It matters in how we present ourselves. And so when you work with negative energy, it kind of comes out. And so for us, we had to do that. And it's those things that aren't business at all that I think do create that authenticity. And also realizing, like, some people are going to like it and some people aren't going to like it. But if you're just going to wake up and try to do what you can do, I think it adds to that.
I just want to say that I that's one of the things that when people ask me about Asheville, I say it's a very giving place, and those that come here and stay here, there's this you got to give to get thing, which is, I think, a big part of our authenticity, is helping one another out. And I've seen time and time again when people come to this town thinking they're just going to take from it. It's like, this is this cool place. It's like, I'm here, I'm this big deal, you know, and then everyone's like, well, I mean, you just came to capitalize on everything that everybody's been working so hard to build and support one another, and you want to just take from that? No, thanks. You know, I think that's one of the things that's really amazing is just seeing breweries support artists, seeing restaurants support musicians, seeing the art community support one another, I think is one of the things that really makes Asheville.
Well, and I think that's a really good point, talking about racial equity as well, you know?
Right, absolutely.
I think that's something to keep in mind.
There's a lot of sides to racial equity. As the guy who's like the black guy in the room a lot, there's more sides to it. And I think it'd be good if, you know, I think there's in this past year, I've probably felt more isolated than I ever have in my entire life. And a lot of it's because, you know, my journey doesn't matter. It's all about like, you know, I'm in the room a lot. I'm in a lot of different rooms. I'm in a lot of different committees. I'm in a lot of different rooms. And yet, you know, a lot of it's like where we go. It's a lot of it's like walk in the room. And I grew up in the South, and you know, there's a lot of things that you couldn't do 40 years ago when I was visiting my grandparents in, you know, South Carolina, and but you can now, but you don't know that until you walk into the room, until you ask the questions, until you push. And I think that's something that hasn't really come across is that there's a lot of fear in getting in that room, but you got to get in that room and you got to talk, and then it's going to have good points and bad points. But if you don't walk in the room, if you don't talk to people, if you don't push the boundaries, then you're never going to get there. And it's all, to me, about something different. That's why I don't like being on the quote unquote black panel. It's not because it's a bad thing. That voice is very, very, very important. And I want to emphasize that. It's just that it's not the only voice.
Yeah. So Pat, the next question is directed at you, and I hope you know this off the top of your head. Oh, whoops. What happened? My computer fell asleep. Brought it back. Did we switch? Oh, where do our tourists primarily come from? What are their demographics?
And what are their names?
Yeah.
Likes,
Addresses.
dislikes.
Asheville's traditionally been a drive market, so our tourists are coming from, you know, the major markets that are within, you know, I'd say up to a 6-hour drive. So that is, you know, your Charlottes, your Greenville, Spartanburg, your, you know, over to Ohio, Atlanta, Charleston. But we have expanded into other states that in coordination with air travel that's opened up for our destination. So that's, you know, DC and Florida, I think some New York, and age demographics. I honestly cannot speak on detailed level about that, but there's a representation from all age demographics. So we're not like focused primarily on just, you know, one age group.
I appreciate the concept of artist placemaking mentioned. This is what makes Asheville look and feel different and attract tourism. What solutions does the panel see for maintaining this? So I'll say again, an arts and cultural master plan would be good for that. And, you know, it's not a document that's going to lay out exactly what we're doing for the next 5 years. It's a document that cuts a lot of red tape and makes it possible for community collaborations, because no one organization can do these things on their own. And so first, to be able to facilitate these things to happen, we need the policy in place. I know that creative placemaking is a real interest of the TDA, and we've talked a lot about that. And so I think there are a lot of, you know, we talked about public-private partnerships earlier. I think there's interest. We just need to start cutting the red tape to make that happen.
There's a project that I didn't have an opportunity to talk about yet, which I'm not sure exactly relates to this, but we're also working on developing an African-American heritage walking trail through downtown and surrounding downtown Asheville. And this is a project that's being funded 100% by the TDA from visitor spending and is being done in coordination with community collaboration, community input. And so basically this will become a cultural arts attraction when it's complete, hopefully by the end of next calendar year, that will honor and preserve the heritage of the Black community in Asheville. And in addition to being like these trail markers that are telling the stories, can also potentially be a couple, public art pieces or plazas or something. So we're basically working with the city, taking in public input to see how we might elevate some of these stops to create some placemaking.
Well, and you're dispersing tourists and through that and connecting them with things they would not have seen otherwise. So I do think it's a sustainable tourism piece. Anybody else wants to
creating safe spaces? I think one of the things that Grind Fest really did for Black tourism is create a safe space. Like I'm out everywhere. It's just who I am, and so the crazy thing for me for Grind Fest this past year was seeing Black people spread throughout Asheville, because that just honestly doesn't happen very often. So walking on the Greenway and I'm on there a lot, or being in Carrier Park and be like, "Ooh, I know you're a tourist and you're Black, and that's different." And seeing that, it was really great, because I've been here since 2000, and so it's not something that you see very often. So I think these types of events and then supporting those types of businesses for that, and the Heritage Trail, and just getting it out there without it being such the big thing, like about Grindfest is it's just a name. It's like a festival, and go and enjoy it and spread that out. And I think it makes people feel safe when you see like-minded people with you in different places. It makes you feel safe.
I think also for the coalition, just to keep fighting to have a seat at the table for all these conversations that are happening. I think that's one of the things that's really important, is that sometimes you have to just keep reminding people that you're here, that the arts are here, that we're not some novelty thing, that arts and culture are a huge part of the community, and we bring a lot to the community and to the tourism sector, and so I think it's really important that we just keep fighting for that.
Yeah. So Pat, this is a question for you again. I told you to do your vocal warm-ups before you came on today. The TDA has been criticized widely for concentrating promotion on Beer City. What specifically is the TDA doing to promote the arts to tourists?
Well, I don't think that the TDA ever did a concentration on Beer City exclusively. And so the arts are absolutely, integral to this community. It's always been a foundation of what has attracted people here, and what adds to, what Justin was saying before. I'm blanking on the words, but really like this authentic community. And so the arts are completely included in all of the promotions, the arts experiences, the arts organizations. I mentioned the commitment of funding through the different grant programs is being used to fund, arts festivals and cultural events, as well as, many arts institutions. I mentioned that early on, but I think that that's something to come back to, is the amount of arts organizations that were funded through this grant program, through the TPDF grants, it's a significant impact. So the Wortham Center, the Art Museum, the Center for Craft, the Black Mountain Museum, College Museum and Arts Center, Leaf Global Arts Center, even what?
YMI.
The YMI Cultural Center, absolutely. So that's a lot of funding and continued commitment to prioritize that type of funding and marketing these assets as well in the future.
So last question, also for Pat. How can artists and arts organizations better tie into and benefit from the tourism market?
I would highly stress or encourage getting involved with Explore Asheville, making sure that if you have a business that, people can access, getting listed on exploreasheville.com. Let's say you're an artist at home who has shows or sells at different galleries, make sure that that information is listed on the calendar. Again, it's a very powerful marketing engine. All of the advertising dollars that are spent in promoting Asheville always links back to exploreasheville.com. So to increase your chances of connecting with that customer base is to become included and involved on that website. And also attend our events. We host, industry events that are educational opportunities or social events, even just to network with each other and our team, and to share your news. We can only promote what we know is happening, and our team is small, relatively small. So keeping on top of all the amazing things that are happening here in our community is a challenge. So helping us to do that is appreciated.
For anybody who's involved in the events sector, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit about if there's any benefit for like individual artists to come to this. You have an event coming up that is a package partnership event, correct?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So we do have an event next Wednesday morning, and this is part of our normal partner event offerings. And I will mention that, working with us is free. In many other communities, that's a paid membership that's required to work with a Convention and Visitors Bureau, but these are free. And so this event will be focused on talking about creating packages. So that's for businesses that, if you have a hotel that wants to package with, a restaurant or an attraction or a tour or something, you can come together and create these interesting offerings that then we can showcase and promote to visitors. So it's really helping to connect people within the community with each other to create, creative offerings.
Great, thanks for sharing.
That's awesome.
Also coming back to like doing the work, like if you have a business, like join a business association. Obviously I'm a chair of one, and so it's easy for me to promote it, but our meetings aren't that big, and a lot of people come to those meetings that you then have a personal connection with that you can talk to. And it's a lot easier to talk to one of 20 than it is to walk in a building that you don't know. And I would strongly suggest, whether it's that or some committee or some way that you can make a connection point that isn't a part of a smaller group. In Asheville, it's really still doable. And in other cities, it really isn't as much, and take advantage of going to these committee meetings and going to somewhere, join a city committee, like find out something that's going on, because you'll meet people. And then in those relationships, you'll be able to gain the contacts that help you out.
Including the Arts Coalition. So join me in thanking this wonderful panel.